Okay, imagine this. You wake up from a nightmare, right? But in this nightmare, music class is just uh, memorizing rules about notes on a page.
Yeah, no actual music playing.
Exactly. Or picture art class,
Mm.
where it's only paint by numbers. No creativity, no blank canvas. What if, like, your deepest creative sparks were just snuffed out
Yeah,
systematically
that's cool.
in school?
It's a unsettling thought.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting to something really fascinating, maybe even a bit controversial. Paul Lockhart's essay, A Mathematician's Lament.
It's quite a piece, really passionate.
It is, and it's not just him complaining about math class, you
Yeah.
know, the bigger call, a really profound one, to completely rethink what mathematics is, fundamentally, and how we teach it.
Or how we should teach it.
Right. So our mission today is to unpack these really surprising analogies he uses, look at what he calls the nightmare of math education as it often stands, and hopefully rediscover this breathtaking beauty he insists is right there at the heart of math.
A beauty most of us probably missed in school.
Definitely. So Lockhart starts us off with this scenario, this dream, that sounds completely, well, absurd at first. He talks about a musician having a terrible nightmare. What's going on in that dream?
Okay, so in this nightmare, music is mandatory for everyone in school. The justification, it's to make students more competitive in an increasingly sound-filled world. Kind of sounds familiar, maybe.
Yeah, a bit.
But here's the twist. Music class itself is totally stripped down. It's just about, like, jiggling symbols on staff paper, endless copying of notes, transposing keys, obsessing over whether stems go up or down.
So no actual, like, feeling the music.
Nope. Actually playing an instrument or even just listening to music, those are considered very advanced topics, maybe for college, maybe grad school.
Wow.
And it gets worse. It's supposedly quite shameful if one's third grader hasn't completely memorized his circle of fifths.
Oh, goodness.
So, predictably, most kids are bored stiff. They're just humming tunes under their breath. Only a tiny few get really good at the notation part, making it look perfect on the page.
And Lockhart doesn't stop there, right? He gives us another nightmare, this time from a painter's perspective.
Exactly. Similar vibe. Imagine you're a painter and you dream of art class. But in this class, there are no easels, no tubes of paint.
No paint in art class.
None. Students are told, straight up, they don't actually apply paint until high school.
So what do?
Well, they study colors, the theory. They study different kinds of applicators. They fill out worksheets writing in the names of colors.
Worksheets for art.
Yeah, and the absolute peak, the goal of high school art, is mastering paint-by-number sequences. Why? Because colleges apparently want to see clear-headed logical thinking.
Logical thinking through paint by numbers, okay?
And the idea of just, taking a blank canvas and painting freely, that's completely alien. That's stuff only, weird abstract professors do.
These pictures he paints are so vivid, almost funny, but he's not just kidding around here, is he? This isn't just satire for him.
Not at all. He drops the punchline and it hits hard. He says, quite plainly, sadly, our present system of mathematics education is precisely this kind of nightmare.
Wow. He actually says that.
Oh, yeah. And he goes even further. He says if his goal, his express purpose, was to design a system specifically to destroy a child's natural curiosity, their innate love of making patterns, he couldn't possibly do a better job than what's already being done.
That's a really powerful indictment of the system.
It really is.
It makes you think, doesn't
Isn't
it?
it?
Like, imagine if your favorite thing, maybe it's cooking or writing or even playing video games, was taught like that. Just rules, formulas, no joy, no creativity. That feeling, that's what Lockhart wants you to connect with how we often treat mathematics.
That sense of loss, yeah.
So, okay, if math class is this nightmare scenario, then what's the dream? What does Lockhart argue mathematics really is? What's it supposed to feel like?
Well, his first big point, the foundation really, is simple but radical. Mathematics is an art.
An art form, like painting or music.
Exactly. But the key problem, he says, is that our culture just doesn't see it that way. We get poets, painters, musicians. Yeah, they're artists. But mathematicians, we tend to stick them in a different box, right? They're the rational thinkers. They're linked with science. They just crunch numbers for computers or something.
Yeah, that's definitely the common stereotype. But he flips that completely.
Totally. He argues there's nothing as dreamy and poetic, nothing as radical, subversive, and psychedelic as mathematics.
Psychedelic.
Math. That's his word. He says it's every bit as mind-blowing as cosmology or physics.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a wild claim. He thinks it allows more freedom of expression than poetry, art, or music.
More freedom. How?
Because, he argues, it deals purely with ideas. There are no physical constraints like paint or sound waves or even words. It's just pure thought, pure imagination. So for him, it's the purest of the arts as well as the most misunderstood.
Okay, that's a big claim.
Yeah.
Purest of the arts. He brings in another mathematician, G.H. Hardy, to help explain this idea, right? What does Hardy add?
Yeah, he quotes Hardy, who famously said, "A mathematician, like a painter or poet, is a maker of patterns." The difference, Hardy thought, is that a mathematician's patterns are more permanent because they're made purely of ideas.
Patterns made of ideas.
Right. And Hardy also said mathematicians love thinking about the simplest possible things, and the simplest possible things are imaginary.
Imaginary things. Okay, let's try to get our heads around that. Lockhart gives an example, doesn't he, to make it less abstract.
He does. He asks you to imagine a triangle, just a perfect imaginary triangle inside a perfect imaginary rectangular box. And the question he poses is, how much of the box does the triangle take up?
Okay, I can picture that.
But he stresses something crucial here. He says, the important thing to understand is that I'm not talking about this drawing of a triangle in a box. He means the pure, perfect idea of it.
Not a real-world, wobbly-lined triangle.
Exactly. In your imagination, things are what you want them to be. You have endless choices. There is no reality to get in your way. You create the rules.
Okay, so you create these perfect imaginary things.
Yeah.
But then comes this really cool part where he says, these creations talk back. What does he mean by that? That sounds intriguing.
It's a fantastic point. So you set up your imaginary world, say, this perfect triangle inside the box. Once you've made those choices, the consequences just happen. Your new creations do what they do, whether you like it or not.
Ah, so you set the stage, but then the play unfolds on its own.
Precisely. That triangle will take up a specific amount of the box. And Lockhart says, you don't get to say what it is. I have to find out what it is.
Find out how, if it's all imaginary.
Not with lab equipment. He says, the only way to get at the truth about our imaginations is to use our imaginations, and that is hard work. It requires thought, reasoning, exploration within that imaginary space.
So this hard work is the actual process of doing mathematics, like solving the puzzle you created. Lockhart shows us his solution for the triangle in the box, right?
Yeah.
How does he do it?
Yeah, and it's beautifully simple. He says, imagine just chopping the rectangle into two pieces, right down the diagonal, from one corner of the triangle's base to the opposite corner of the box.
Okay, got it.
When you do that, you instantly see something. Each of those two new, smaller rectangles you just made, the triangle cuts each of them perfectly in half.
Ah, I see it. So if it cuts both halves in half?
Then it must take up exactly half of the whole box. Boom. It's a visual, intuitive proof.
That is elegant.
And Lockhart just loves this. He says, this is what a piece of mathematics looks and feels like. It's fascinating, it's fun, and it's free. He compares discovering something like that to the inspiration a painter feels. He calls these discoveries beautiful little poems of thought, these sonnets of pure reason. And then he asks, rhetorically, isn't that what art is all about?
That really reframes it. When you think about that kind of aha moment, that sudden clarity, it does feel like the satisfaction you get from solving a really good puzzle or seeing a clever design, that's the core feeling he's pointing to.
Exactly, that intrinsic joy of discovery.
Okay, so if that's what mathematics is, or can be, this creative, beautiful, puzzle-solving art form, why is the experience most of us have in school so not that? Why is it so different?
Yeah, that's the lament part. Lockhart says it's simply heartbreaking to see what is being done to mathematics in school. He sees this rich and fascinating adventure of the imagination being reduced to a sterile set of facts to be memorized and procedures to be followed.
So let's go back to that triangle example. How does the typical school approach butcher that beautiful, simple discovery we just talked about?
Well, instead of letting students play with the idea, maybe cut paper, maybe just visualize it and discover that half-box relationship themselves.
They just get the answer up front.
Pretty much. They're just given the formula. Area equals 1/2 base times height. A equals 12 BH. And then they are asked to memorize this formula and then apply it over and over in the exercises.
I'll apply it. Like plug in numbers.
Right. And Lockhart just despairs over this. He says, gone is the thrill, the joy, even the pain and frustration of the creative act. There is not even a problem anymore. The question has been asked and answered at the same time. There is nothing left for the student to do.
It's like reading the last page of a mystery novel first.
Exactly. It kills the whole point.
Now, to be fair, he's not saying formulas themselves are evil. It's more about how they're presented.
Yes, he clarifies that. He says, it's not about formulas or memorizing interesting facts. That's fine in context. The problem isn't the formula A equal 12BH itself. He says, it's not the fact that triangles take up half their box that matters. What matters is the beautiful idea of chopping it with the line and how that might inspire other beautiful ideas.
Ah, the idea behind the formula. The why.
Precisely. He argues that by removing the creative process and leaving only the results, you virtually guarantee that no one will have any real engagement with the subject. His analogy for this is powerful. It's like telling someone Michelangelo made a stunning sculpture, showing them maybe a photo of the plaque next to it, but never letting them actually see the David itself.
You just get the label, not the art.
Right, you miss the whole experience.
So when we just focus on the what, the facts, the formulas, and we leave out the why, the reasoning, the discovery, the argument, what is fundamentally lost, in Lockhart's view?
He puts it starkly. By concentrating on what and leaving out why, mathematics is reduced to an empty shell. The art is not in the truth, but in the explanation, the argument. Mathematics is the art of explanation.
The art of explanation. I like that.
Yeah. And so he argues when you deny students the chance to pose their own problems, make their own conjectures and discoveries, to be wrong, to be creatively frustrated, to have an inspiration, and to cobble together their own explanations and proofs, basically, to do what mathematicians do, you deny them mathematics itself.
You're not teaching math. You're teaching something else that just looks like math.
That kind of pseudo-mathematics, yeah. And he thinks this isn't just a school problem, it's cultural.
How so?
Well, he points out that as a society, we kind of understand that painting involves human expression, science involves discovery, but math, we don't generally see it that way. And this lack of understanding and appreciation for mathematics in our culture replicates itself indefinitely in school.
Like a cycle.
Yeah, a sad one. And what's worse, he says, is that some people actually become really good at this rule-following pseudo-math. They get good grades, they build self-esteem around it, but then maybe later they realize they have no real mathematical talent and are just very good at following directions. And his punchline, math is not about following directions, it's about making new directions.
Making new directions, that's a powerful distinction.
Yeah.
So what about the argument we always hear that we need this kind of math because it's useful, for science, engineering, daily life? How does Lockhart tackle that?
He really pushes back on that. First, he questions how much of that advanced practical math people actually use day to day. And second, he points out that the parts that are useful are often the most boring bits.
Fair point.
His radical proposal is mathematics should be taught as art for art's sake, just for the beauty and joy of it. And if you do that, he believes these mundane, useful aspects would follow naturally as a trivial byproduct.
So focus on the art, and the utility will take care of itself.
That's his bet. He thinks the current focus on usefulness is counterproductive because we are losing so many potentially gifted mathematicians, creative, intelligent people who rightly reject what appears to be a meaningless and sterile subject.
It really makes you pause and think about your own school experience, doesn't it? If you ever felt like, oh, I'm just bad at math or math isn't for me, Lockhart is basically saying, hey, maybe it wasn't you. Maybe it was the math you were shown that was the problem.
Exactly. Maybe you just never got to see the real thing.
Now, Lockhart seems to save some special venom for one particular subject, high school geometry. He calls it something like an instrument of the devil. Why such intense dislike for geometry class?
Yeah, he really dislikes standard high school geometry. He calls it the most mentally and emotionally destructive component of the entire K-12 mathematics curriculum. Strong words.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Why? What's his reasoning?
Well, first he talks about what a mathematical argument, a proof, should be. He says it's a work of fiction, a poem. Its goal is to satisfy. A good proof should explain clearly, deeply, and elegantly. And he adds, it should be charming.
Charming, a math proof.
That's what he wants. Something that delights you with its cleverness or clarity. So then he looks at typical school geometry proofs and asks, are they charming?
And his answer is?
A resounding no. He gives the classic example, proving that when two lines cross, the angles opposite each other, the vertical angles, are equal. Something you can just see is true by looking at it.
Yeah, that seems pretty obvious.
Right. But school geometry takes this obvious fact and first introduces unnecessary muddying of the waters with excessive notation, naming points, lines, angles with specific symbols. And then this patently obvious statement has to be proved using this incredibly rigid, step-by-step, two-column statement reason format.
Oh, I remember those. Statement on the left, reason on the right.
Exactly. And Lockhart basically asks, be honest, did you actually even read it? Of course not. Who would want to?
It's bureaucratic, it's tedious, it adds no understanding to something already clear.
So what's the harm in that? Beyond just being boring, what's the deeper damage he sees?
He thinks the effect is to make people doubt their own intuition. By calling into question the obvious, by insisting that it be rigorously proved, is to say to a student, your feelings and ideas are suspect. You need to think and speak our way. It undermines their confidence in their own reasoning.
Wow, okay, that's a serious charge.
Now, he's quick to add that formal, rigorous proof definitely has its place in mathematics. But, he argues, it's for situations when there is a crisis, when you discover that your imaginary objects behave in a counterintuitive way, when there's a paradox of some kind, not for proving things that are visually obvious.
So save the heavy machinery for when you actually need it, not for cracking simple nuts.
Okay, so if proving vertical angles are equal is a bad example of a proof problem, what would Lockhart consider a good one? Something that actually warrants that hard work of imagination.
He gives a beautiful example. Imagine a semicircle, okay? And you draw a triangle inside it, but the base of the triangle has to be the diameter of the semicircle.
Okay, base along the flat edge.
Right. And the third corner, the third vertex of the triangle, can be anywhere on the curved part of the semicircle.
Got it.
Now, here's the amazing thing. No matter where you put that third point on the curve, the angle it forms up there will always be a right angle, a perfect 90 degrees.
Always. That doesn't seem obvious at all. Actually, it seems kind of unlikely.
Exactly. Lockhart says, here's a case where our intuition is somewhat in doubt. It's not at all clear that this should be true. It even seems unlikely. This, he declares, is a fantastic math problem. It makes you wonder why it's true. It begs for an explanation, a proof.
Okay, that is intriguing. So what does the typical textbook do with this fantastic curiosity-piquing problem?
Oh, you guessed it. They immediately slap a label on it. Theorem 9.5. And then they present another one of those unattractive and inelegant formal two-column proofs.
Killing the magic again.
Totally. Lockhart just throws his hands up. This isn't mathematics. A proof should be an epiphany from the gods, not a coded message from the Pentagon.
Uh-huh. Okay, so how should it be approached? He contrasts the textbook proof with one from a student.
Yes. And this is lovely. He shares an argument from one of his 7th grade students trying to explain why that angle is always a right angle. The student said something like this. Take the triangle and rotate it 180 degrees around the center of the circle's flat side. Fits perfectly next to the original one, right? Together, they make a four-sided shape, a quadrilateral, inside the circle.
Okay, I can picture rotating it.
Since the triangle got turned completely around, the opposite sides of this new four-sided box must be parallel, so it's a parallelogram. But wait, the student realizes, it can't be just any slanted parallelogram because both of its diagonals are diameters of the circle. They go right through the center and touch both sides, so the diagonals are equal length.
And if a parallelogram has equal diagonals?
It must be an actual rectangle. It can't be slanted. And if it's a rectangle, all its corners are right angles. That's why the corner of the original triangle up on the circle is always a right angle.
Wow. That explanation, using rotation and properties of shapes, that's actually delightful. You can follow the logic, you can see it.
Exactly. Lockhart loves it. He says the idea comes across. And crucially, it was the student's own idea. It didn't come easy. It was developed over several days, probably involving a long sequence of failures. This struggle, this process, this private, personal experience of being a struggling artist is exactly what the standard curriculum stamps out.
It removes the entire journey of discovery.
Completely.
He even critiques how basic things like definitions are taught, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah, he thinks we get that backwards, too. He argues definitions matter, but they shouldn't be handed down like commandments at the start. They should arise naturally from problems. He says they come from aesthetic decisions about what distinctions you as an artist consider important, and they are problem-generated.
So you encounter a problem, and then you need a definition to talk about it precisely.
Exactly. His motto is, you don't start with definitions, you start with problems. He gives the example of irrational numbers. That definition didn't just appear. It came about because Pythagoras and others were struggling with a specific problem: how to measure the diagonal of a square perfectly. The problem created the need for the concept and the definition. He wants students to feel ownership, to say, that's my definition, my theorem, my proof.
That's such a different way of thinking about it. It makes you wonder how many times in math class you were just told, well, that's the definition, without any sense of why it mattered or where it came from. Lockhart's saying that very approach misrepresents how math is actually built.
It really does. It presents it as a finished museum piece instead of an active construction site.
Okay, to really hammer his point home about the state of K-12 math, Lockhart does this thing where he writes out what he calls the first ever completely honest course catalog. It's pretty brutal.
Oh, it's scathing. He goes through the typical sequence grade by grade and offers his unvarnished take.
Walk us through some of the highlights, or maybe lowlights. How does he describe the early years?
Okay, so for lower school math, he says, the indoctrination begins. Students learn that mathematics is not something you do, but something that is done to you. The focus. Worksheets, following directions blindly, memorizing multiplication tables without necessarily understanding them.
Ouch.
Ah.
Done to you. Okay, what about middle school?
For middle school math, he describes it as turning into religious rites, with textbooks becoming like holy tablets. He mocks the contrived and artificial word problems designed to make the drudgery seem relevant or fun. And he criticizes the focus on unnecessary technical terms, like distinguishing whole number from natural number or proper fraction from improper fraction before students grasp the core ideas.
So, jargon over substance.
That's the implication. Then comes algebra at first. He says it focuses almost entirely on symbols and the rules for pushing them around, completely losing the historical story, the narrative thread of why algebra developed. And he adds, with clear sarcasm, students must also memorize the quadratic formula for some reason.
Just memorize it, don't necessarily understand its derivation or beauty.
Right. Then geometry, which we've already talked about. He says this course will raise the hopes of students who wish to engage in meaningful mathematical activity and then dash them. Its true goal, in his view, to eradicate any last remaining vestiges of natural mathematical intuition.
That is just devastating. What comes after geometry?
Algebra the second. He sees this as full of unmotivated and inappropriate use of coordinate geometry, just plotting points and graphs without deeper understanding. He critiques how conic sections, circles, ellipses, parabolas, are introduced in a way that manages to avoid the aesthetic simplicity of cones in their sections, just reinforcing what he calls the ladder mythology, the idea that you just climb rung after rung of prerequisites without seeing the big picture.
Just disconnected topics on a ladder to nowhere.
Kind of. Next is trigonometry. He dismisses it as 2 weeks of content stretched to semester length by masturbatory definitional runarounds.
Wow, okay.
He argues it obscures the beautiful patterns of waves and circles with irrelevant abbreviations and obsolete notational conventions. And he specifically targets mnemonic devices like SOHCAHTOA, saying they replace real understanding and intuition.
So instead of seeing the relationships in a right triangle, you're just chanting an acronym.
That's his critique. Then you get pre-calculus, which he calls a senseless bouillabaisse of disconnected topics, just a random stew thrown together, designed, he claims, to actively obscure the intuitively clear notion of smooth change, which is what calculus is actually about.
So it makes the intro to calculus harder.
Ironically, yes, in his view. And finally, calculus itself. While it explores the profound mathematics of motion, he argues the way it's taught buries these ideas under a mountain of unnecessary formalism. The simple, elegant, intuitive core ideas of Newton and Leibniz get lost in complicated procedures and notation.
It sounds like a systematic dismantling of curiosity and intuition at every stage.
That's exactly how he portrays it.
In his final summary of this entire K-12 catalog.
It doesn't pull any punches either, does it?
No, it's the final nail in the coffin. He calls this whole sequence a complete prescription for permanently disabling young minds, a proven cure for curiosity.
A cure for curiosity, that's chilling. It is. He follows it up by lamenting again, saying there's such breathtaking depth and heartbreaking beauty in this ancient art form. How ironic that people dismiss mathematics as the antithesis of creativity. He feels people are profoundly missing out on an art form older than any book, more profound than any poem, and more abstract than any abstract. And, he concludes, it is school that has done this.
Wow. Lockhart's Lament is just incredibly powerful, isn't it? And deeply provocative. It really suggests the core problem isn't math itself. It's not necessarily the students, maybe not even always the teachers in isolation, but this deep, deep cultural misunderstanding of what math is, what it feels like, what it could be.
Yeah, he seems to see teachers and students as often trapped in this system together. He talks about a sad, endless cycle of innocent teachers inflicting damage upon innocent students. It's a systemic issue fueled by this cultural blind spot.
But he doesn't end on complete despair, does he? There's a little glimmer of hope.
There is. Despite the scathing critique, he holds on to the idea that it could be different. He simply states, "We could all be having so much more fun." There's this potential for joy and discovery that's just being squandered.
It leaves you thinking, doesn't it? If we really want to reignite that spark, that natural curiosity and love of pattern making that he believes is innate in children, maybe the first step isn't just fiddling with the curriculum details. Maybe it's about us as a culture, rediscovering the art of mathematics for ourselves, in how we think, how we approach problems, how we appreciate elegance.
Yeah, maybe the change starts with how we adults perceive it first. And, true to form, Lockhart doesn't just stop with the critique. He ends the essay ready to dive back into the art itself.
Right, he leaves us with that little cliffhanger.
Yeah. I think I have an idea about a pyramid inside a cube. Already playing with the next pattern.